Battlehosts. Be a better gamer, build a better community.
Welcome to Battlehosts, a podcast and website dedicated to helping you become a better 40K gamer and to build a better community of players. I'm your host, Mark, and with me tonight is Sean.
Hi there.
Sean, we haven't had you on in a while.
Yeah, it's been I think probably 6 episodes.
Yeah.
3 months, something like that. It's been a while.
This is another one of our episodes during the COVID-19 shutdown, so we're still mostly sheltering in place, but yeah, it's good to have you on, man.
Yeah, it's good to be back.
All right. If you like what you hear, subscribe to us on iTunes and YouTube to catch all the latest episodes. You can follow us on Facebook under The Battlehosts. If you'd like to support The Battlehosts for as little as $1 a month, please visit patreon.com/thebattlehosts. If you join for $3 a month, you get access to our Discord chat where we discuss all things related to the hobby. All right. In this episode, we discuss the digital content and products that exist for Warhammer 40K. And with the announcement of the new edition of 40K, I think the most exciting thing to me was the 40K app. I don't know. To me, it was something that they've had a long time coming. We've all been asking for it for a long, long time.
Yes.
I think we decided to take this opportunity to kind of look back at their history of digital releases to this point. And also, there's been a lot of third-party developers that have kind of stepped into the absence of areas that, GW has not been exploring. And they've been producing some things to sort of fill the needs of, the customers in the community. And so we'll talk a little bit about like what the third-party guys are doing. And then also, what are our hopes for the Warhammer 40K app and how might it shape the future of Warhammer 40K? Because I think that there's a lot of potential here.
Oh, there really is. If they are able to incorporate it well, it will be game-changing.
Yeah.
If they don't incorporate it well, people won't use it. But we'll get more into that later.
Yeah, they won't use it and it'll die, unfortunately. But, and there's been they've had a lot of successes, but they've also had just some misfires, and we'll kind of get into that a little bit. So before jumping into Digital 40K, let's hear a word from our sponsor, DGT.
We all love Warhammer 40K, but sometimes games just take too long. Using a game timer is the best way to make sure games finish and for both players to get an equal amount of time. Check out the Easy Game Timer from DGT, manufacturers and designers of the timers officially sanctioned by the International Chess Federation. It's simple to set up and customize, and your settings are saved when it's turned off. It's easy to use with a large moving lever for changing turns and a clear digital readout. It's the most affordable and high-quality game timer on the market and is the choice of most 40K events. Whether you want to practice before a big event or you just want to be a better player, the Easy Game Timer from DGT is the perfect game timer for your 40K events. The DGT Easy Game Timer is available from many online retailers. Wholesale pricing is also available for tournament organizers. Check these flying clocks out at dgtnorthamerica.com. Speed up your game and improve your play with the Easy Game Timer from DGT.
Okay, let's get into it. So, now, the app's coming out, and we want to talk about Games Workshop's history with digital products. And an app has been something, like we said, we've been talking about and asking for a long time. And in many ways, Games Workshop has been kind of behind the times when it comes to digital products. I think it's a byproduct of them kind of being in an ivory tower for so many years. I mean, when they first started engaging with the community, they joke like we just discovered the internet, and I don't know how true. Obviously not completely true, but they finally discovered like, oh, hey, there's these things called social media and we can engage with people. So
yeah, they knew what it was. They didn't know how to use it as a business.
Yes.
And I really do think that is the truth. They did not understand how to really use the internet to do now what they're doing and what they're going to be doing in the future.
Yeah.
Which is driving more eyes to 40K, opening it up to a wider audience, making it more accessible, more interesting. They've done a very good job at that in the last few years.
Yeah, for sure. Now, let's talk about their digital releases. The very first thing we have to come to is video games, because they've had some very good classic video games. And in fact, a lot of people, they got into the universe with the first Dawn of War was really the classic. This is kind of the one that most people kind of hold up as like, this was the thing that got me into 40K.
Yeah, and it's definitely what, for me, as a teenager, inspired me. This is a game that I actually want to play, not just read about.
Yeah.
Because I got started on the Ultramarines Omnibus. That was the first 40K that I ever read.
Oh, okay.
And then I found Dawn of War and played Dawn of War, and then I was like, I got to get models.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And their video games have spanned several genres. They've done turn-based stuff. They've done some real-time shooter stuff. They've done real-time strategy. They've had straight board game adaptations. They've had different platforms, PC, console, even iPhone games, and Android games. There's some classics. There's some that are just kind of meh, and then there's some that are just not good at all. So,
yeah,
they have not had a problem licensing their IP to video game content, like third-party video game producers.
Mm-hmm. And I think what they hold those companies to in terms of this is what you must do with our license is honestly not that stringent. You know what I mean? Like I think that they give them some directives on lore and what they want the game to feel like, but it really has been cool to see some of these different studios take interesting takes on the game. Yeah.
I mean, the classic Dawn of War 2 is a different game. It's I can't remember exactly what RTS it's based off of, but it's good in its own way.
Yeah. It's much smaller scale, more focused on your units, not necessarily on the base building, which fits Space Marines a lot better.
Yeah. And of course, the theory, of course, was StarCraft was originally going to be a Warhammer Universe product. I don't remember. I don't remember exactly how that all worked out or how much that's become just legend at this point. But there's a reason StarCraft has a lot of similarities to 40K.
Yeah, and I think it actually started with Warcraft.
Oh, it was a
Warcraft. I think Warcraft was supposed to be a Warhammer product, if I remember correctly, because Warcraft released before StarCraft.
Oh, that's right. Correctly. Yeah. Of course, Warcraft was the first ones out. Yeah, for sure. And then Dawn of War 3, I don't think was as successful. I don't remember. I don't think I ever played it. Space Marine.
It wasn't very good.
Yeah. Space Marine was a great game. The first person first person shooters, there were and still are a glut of them on the market. There's a ton of them, but I thought the Space Marine game was really good.
Yeah, the campaign was 40K, which was very nice to see. Where it really, you got into it, you played it, you saw the interactions, saw the orcs, saw how the Space Marines fight, and everything read as, okay, this is what 40K should look like in this game, and that felt really good. And then the multiplayer was actually one of the big keeping points. People would play through the campaign and then find the multiplayer and realize, wow, this is actually incredibly fun.
Oh, yeah.
Designing your own Space Marine, picking your loadout. It was a blast.
Yeah, for sure. And then, they've had Space Hulk with multiple versions of that. And they don't seem to have a problem using their duplicating the board game mechanics of their board games. When I say board games, I mean just smaller scale stuff. So, because Space Hulk plays just like Space Hulk, and Blood Bowl, for that matter, plays just like Blood Bowl.
Yes.
It's weird that they haven't tried to do a tabletop experience, like port over Warhammer 40K rules, like an edition of Warhammer 40K and duplicate that digitally.
Yeah, and that's been something that's been requested before, and I've kind of wondered why haven't they done it. And really, for me, what I think is that it doesn't. If you replicate the 40K game on a computer, it's not really widening your audience. Because if somebody was going to be interested in that video game, they probably would have been interested in learning the real game anyways.
Yeah.
And so all of these other games are grabbing different groups in the nerd community generally and dragging them in with very accessible experiences, right? Oh, you're playing a shooter. You know how to play shooters. You can pick that up and play, but look at all this 40K stuff. Oh, now you're interested, right? And it kind of brings them back to, I really like this game. Let me try other stuff out. I don't know if just putting the game digitally works, because it's not going to be, honestly, it's not going to be accessible.
Yeah.
Think about a tutorial trying to teach you how to play 40K instead of somebody across the table showing you how to do it. How frustrating is that going to be?
Well, yeah, actually, that's a good point. Their board games are rules that have boundaries. That's just it. They're not going to be updating the rules all the time. They're not going to be changing things around. Think about how the tabletop experience evolves over 3 years within 8th edition. It's a very different game from when it first started. So.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a good point, because it Blood Bowl and Space Hulk have, they're not changing, and so they may put in new races, but essentially it's the same game.
Exactly.
Yeah, but 40K. So here's the thing. Right now, it's never been an issue before, but now with COVID, people are using Tabletop Simulator, which, have you tried that?
I have.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
It's clunky in some ways. It will lengthen your games pretty significantly, if you're trying to play the same size games. And I think really that just comes down to you're trying to replicate a 3D space on the table on a computer with limited interaction possibilities. But once you get used to the clunkiness, it's definitely doable.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see why people have been getting their 40K fix over it.
Yeah.
I don't know how much Tabletop Simulator will keep its influence after we start playing live games again.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, if there was something like that was a little easier to use. You're right, because it's not a game. Tabletop Simulator is simulating something somebody already knows how to play. So
yes,
it has its limited application. I guess the nice thing about it is when you're creating an army list, you can create whatever the heck you want. You're not bound by building and painting models or even having access to proxies. You can just well, you know what? Let's try this crazy thing and what the heck, see what happens.
Yeah, and it is very useful for that, and very interesting, because it means that things that would have been a money gate before aren't. Like money gate as in, I'm not going to spend $700 to go buy all of, to spam this one unit or this one model. Yeah. And there are units out there like that. I mean, not that they're good, but I think a Beast of Nurgle is a single Beast of Nurgle is $40 or something like that.
Yeah.
And you need a group, a unit of them. So they're a very expensive unit. You're not going to see somebody running 3 units of Beast of Nurgle in the real world almost ever, because they're not going to want to invest that much. Tabletop Simulator, you can do it. Yeah,
just drag and drop. I actually think it was something I think people had to do because they wanted to get their fix, but at the same time, maybe it's something that people will use for theory crafting among friends. Like certain groups of people will theory craft different lists, and they're not in the same space, and so maybe it won't be. It might die off a little bit, but maybe it's like a substitute, sort of a side thing. Because they've had these things before. Before Tabletop Simulator, it was I can't remember what it was called. There was another thing like that where you could do tabletop games across, but it was always really they're always clunky and they're not easy to set up. So you really have to be committed to want to do it. And War Machine I think they had a strict port of their tabletop experience, but that's a smaller game, really. There's not as much stuff.
Yeah, you're not using as many units. The interactions are pretty complicated, but War Machine for me has always felt like more of a card game played with models.
Okay.
In that it was always built around synergy, combos, proper activation of certain units to do certain things.
Yeah.
So I think maybe it lends itself a little bit better to that, and also War Machine as a game had standardized cards for their units long before datasheet entries got to the point that 40K got them to, which I think is they've approached now. Okay, you have everything you need to know about this unit in this one spot. War Machine had that the whole time, pretty much. And those cards, I think, building a game around, okay, here's your cards on the bottom. You can see all your units. You can see all their stats. I think it just kind of naturally worked a little bit better.
Yeah. It's interesting because I played a little bit of War Machine. It's been years, and you played it quite a bit, didn't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep. Do you think
for a few years
40K is kind of approaching War Machine? Do you think it's the game is sort of evolving into being a little more similar to it than before?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do. Not even just the data sheet stuff, but how the game plays on the tabletop. An army these days, when you're looking at an army, it's not it's not what are the just straight unit stats. So that's definitely a good start. It's what strats can I do? What warlord traits can I combine with those strats? What doctrines or chapter tactics can I pick that combined with those two will create some combo that I'm going to then try to overpower the opponent with. And it's that combo seeking that reminds me again of kind of that card game aspect of okay, I'm going to have these pieces and they're all going to work together and they're going to power up this win condition, and that win condition is what I'm going to win off of.
Yeah, combo seeking. Okay, you know what? That's probably a podcast topic all in itself. We'll explore this later, especially after 9th comes out, because this is an interesting topic. But before we jump off the video game piece here, what are some of your favorite video games that were 40K related?
Yeah, so I mentioned Dawn of War getting me started, so I got to shout out Dawn of War.
Oh yeah.
Funny enough, I was a Tau player in Dawn of War, and then I started interacting with the game, and I realized I don't want to be a Tau player. Space Marine, definitely. The Deathwing Space Hulk game is a good amount of fun.
Yeah.
You really do need friends to play it with. You need a group to play through it, or else it's incredibly hard.
Oh, yeah.
But that's a really fun game. I like the feeling of being a Terminator in that game. I think they did it pretty well. I have not played it, so it's not one of my favorite, but I have heard really good things about the Adeptus Mechanicus game, the investigative Adeptus Mechanicus game, and I just want to give it a shout out just because the soundtrack of that game is the sound of 40K.
Yeah,
it's choral chanting and like heavy industrial background. It's really cool stuff.
And it's like a turn-based game, right? It's like an XCOM style.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah. So just for those of you that want cool 40K ambient music, check out the soundtrack for that game.
Yeah, and of course, Warhammer Total War 2, which is funny because it's not 40K and it's not even a current universe.
It's not even Sigmar.
But it's it is good. I mean, granted, it's part of it just because it's Total War, which has its own great engine, but dang, that's a good game. That was a game that I recently started playing, and I lost hours of my life, and I'm like, oh boy. That's one of those danger games. There are certain PC games in my mind that are very dangerous, and that seems like to be one of them, so I have to be very careful.
I hear you. And then another shout out on the 360 generation. There was an arcade game that I think it was one of those that it was very close to Space Hulk, or maybe it was Death Watch. I think it was Death Watch, but it was a bullet hell shooter. So it was you and another Marine, and you were fighting a bunch of orcs on a Space Hulk, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
And we should point out, I mean, they've been developing video games with the Warhammer license for a long, long time. If you look back at their history, the first ones they released, we're talking like Amigas. I mean, they've been releasing these things for a while. So Games Workshop has been licensing this for a long time.
Yes, and a classic we didn't shout out was Fire Warrior.
Yeah,
I never played it, but I know that a lot of people got it, in the older generation of getting on board with it. Those that were joining around the 2000s, Fire Warrior was one that got them in. Yeah,
I mean, even right now, if I look on my phone, I play Warhammer Combat Cards. It's one of those time waster games. It's literally I've got a couple seconds, nothing interesting on Facebook. Let me waste time on the Warhammer Combat Cards game, and it's just a time waster game, but it's fun.
Yeah, it's fun and interesting.
Yeah.
And to correct myself, what I'm talking about is it was called Kill Team.
Kill Team
is what I'm talking about.
Got it.
Looks like Death Watch is a turn-based strategy.
Oh, got it. Okay, so Kill Team. Yeah. Now,
but there's a lot of games out there, more than people realize.
Yeah, quite a bit. I mean, there's the standouts, but I mean, not just a lot of games, but a lot of really good games. So, but there's also just a lot of poor licensings. So
they shot 5 licenses out there and hoped that one would stick.
Yep, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now we come to sort of the Black Library, and the Black Library is really its own area within Games Workshop. They are they write the stories, they write the books, and Black Library has had ebooks and audiobooks for a long time. They've been using, they've come out with them for a while, and I think every book publisher has been on the ebook train for quite a long time. And so they've had them out, and Black Library does a great job of just the audio books being, they've added sound effects to them. They've really made, and it's actually perfect to fit with what they want you to do, which is buy and build miniatures, because it's like, well, what are you going to listen to? Well, how about you listen to the sounds of some cool story? And so the Black Library audiobooks are usually really good, and they've all been in. Digitally speaking, Black Library has been keeping pace with just about everything. It's keeping pace with every other publisher. So there's nothing there that they've been missing out on.
Yeah.
So-
They've done a very good job.
Yeah.
I think Black Library is one of the most consistent departments for Games Workshop in terms of finding ways to have a lot of really good quality.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I mean, video games and Black Library books are there to push the IP into different kinds of entertainment, right? So they don't really support their tabletop miniatures game, except in that, like I said, you might want to listen to a Black Library novel while you paint, and they kind of market it that way, and I admit that I do as well. I mean, usually that's when I listen to audiobooks, it's when I'm painting or podcasts. Codexes as ebooks have been around for a while, so you could get the rules in like a digital platform, but it's like a direct digital translation. It's not taking advantage of something a digital platform might use for rules. So there isn't like a lot of hyperlinking. There is, you still have to swipe to find rules. I mean, you can bookmark things, but it's kind of like maybe 25% of what it could be. It's there. It exists, but it's not as good or as clean as it could be.
Yeah, there's a lot of wasted potential there, or at least untapped potential.
Yeah.
To use a less loaded word.
Yeah.
Just where they could have incorporated a lot more into it, and they didn't.
Yeah.
And I think that is a holdover from they were just trying to figure out some of these systems in general. Okay, how do we get a codex online? Let's do that. Let's get it as an ebook. And then I think 9th is when we're going to see the idea of, okay, let's start incorporating some of the digital tools we have, like a search function, or being able to just cut out all, select just a few units and have it open next to each other. I don't know if it's coming, but those kind of ideas.
Yeah, because really, if you think about like the digital codex is just page turning the codex, and yes, it might have often they have like a chapter, and they may even have some links to things, but it's not, because the physical book reads like a book, but the rules, like the actual rules, if you want a digital platform for the rules, you don't need even the artwork. You don't need, you don't need a lot of the stuff that they include to make it atmospheric and nice when you're holding it in your hands. And like you said, I can't grab 4 units and compare them. I can't compare 2 things without flipping back and forth. I can't link to rules. I can't look at what are all the stratagems that are attached to this thing. Like what? Yeah. There's so many cool things. We'll talk about that when we get to the app, which I know the app won't have, but it might have eventually. But there's a lot of cool stuff. Yeah. Now they've had some companion apps too, and they had the dice rolling app, which I thought was great. It was a really cool app.
Yeah, I feel like they should have continued to support it.
Yeah, at first I was kind of like, a dice rolling app, really? But then, when I have 30 shots or 50 shots, that dice rolling app is quite nice. It's really nice.
Definitely. So. Yeah, and I was never an iPhone user, so I never had access to it because it was only the Apple suite of products. Mm-hmm. But it was always very nice when I was playing against, say, an IG player, and he's like, well, this 30-man combined squad is going to first rank fire, second rank fire. I'm going to go ahead and use the dice app.
Yep.
Like, oh, thank God.
Yes. Thank you so much. Yeah. And the more, like in our area, the conscientious orc players or the guard players are the ones that knew they had a lot of rolling. They would just whip the app out, and they had it all kind of worked out. And unfortunately, I still have it, but it's been discontinued. You can't get it, and it was never an Android app. So they have the Citadel Paint app, which is good. Like, it started off doing okay, but it's a good reference app now.
Yeah. Yep.
So I think the Citadel Paint app is a good example of an app that came out which had some limited functionality, but they've been slowly improving it, and they haven't dropped support for it. So to me, I think that's a great example of, if they could build in-house apps and keep supporting it, then that's awesome.
Yeah. That's an app that I've seen people using in the wild.
Yeah.
Which is always, a good indication of, oh, hey, somebody actually pulled that out to talk colors. That's cool.
For sure. So Age of Sigmar has had an app for a while, and it's just a Warhammer Age of Sigmar app, and it has all the rules. It has a list building function. It has like a setup so you can create like a battle plan. It has access to the rules, although the core rules are literally digitized pages of the core rules. So it's not perfect. It is. Yep. There's some level of things in here, and if you look at the War Scrolls are kind of just nicely formatted to text. So you're not seeing the linking, and you're not seeing a lot of the stuff that they could take advantage of. So really what it is it's a nicely organized digital app that is basically using a lot of just the formatting from like Pages stuff. So it's still not doing all the stuff that we talked about, like all the cool stuff.
No.
So
it's a start.
It's a start. It's a start.
It's a start, and you can use it to make lists, right?
Yeah, which is kind of the important thing for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, that's all the stuff that Games Workshop really has been doing, and we look at third-party content. There's a lot of third-party developers and content that's kind of rushed in. Now, when they stopped engaging with the community years and years ago, which for some newer players, it doesn't feel like that ever happened. It was just a weird dream, but it was a thing for years. And when they stopped doing that, I think that's when forums became really popular, because people put out forums that they're kind of dying off. Social media has taken over, but there was a lot of very, very popular forums out there.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Daka was popular. What are some of the other ones?
Bolter and Chainsword
is still around. Yeah, I mean these things are still exist, but
yeah, one that was smaller, but that I was on personally was 40K forums. Was just what it was called. That had a nice long life, and then eventually, like most of these forums are doing, declined to a point where they couldn't justify keeping the server cost.
Yeah,
and so they shut it down.
Yeah.
And forums had a very fun feel. I think. I think a lot of people. I understand why social media replaced them, but I think a lot of people that didn't participate in forums look back on it and are like, "Well, yeah, but social media does the same thing." But by having it all be permanent and organized into those specific boards, you were able to have connections with other users of the forum much easier, and then content could be refreshed. Like, let's say that somebody that really likes to showcase their painting, let's say that Colin, could start a thread for just all of his stuff, and then as soon as he posted anything, he'd repost it, and anybody that opens that thread is going to be able to see all of his stuff. Yeah, right. And you don't get that on social media, where it's like, okay, you post it, it's there for 2 days, and then it's lost in the wash of history. Yeah.
It's interesting that threaded discussions have kind of gone away. Like even Discord, yes, you have boards and you have topics, but you don't have buckets of discussion where you can kind of just contain it. So you can go back to it. So yeah.
And I would say Discord is the closest to a forum feel out of all the social media platforms, compared to Reddit or Facebook or anything like that. I think Discord is the one that gets closest.
Yeah.
Forums were good. I think they did a lot for the game.
Yep. They kept a lot of the community interest, and I think people. It's really hard to understate that when it was just a community talking to each other. And I mean, Games Workshop shut their own forum down because it becomes toxic. I get it. I mean, that's the nature of online interactions sometimes. And some of the forums were better than others, but it was still people talking about the hobby for a long time.
Yeah.
So, and then of course YouTube is obviously very, very, very popular now, to the point where YouTube is so far beyond its roots of like, hey, here's a funny home video. It's polished video content from producers that are really, dedicated to creating amazing things. Paint videos, content around like the tactics and lore and battle reports. Those things are much better now, but they were also, even in their infancy years and years ago, before Warhammer had a community team, these things were also keeping, the 40K name out there.
Absolutely.
And then podcasts have been around a while, and now we're seeing a lot of Twitch streams for games. So there's all this third-party content that supports this game. And it's interesting because, like even this own podcast, right? We do this for fun. You don't make money on a podcast. Let's just say, I'll just let you know right away. We do this as part of our hobby. This is something we do that's enjoyable. This podcast has been around, and we talk about this game, and it only exists because we all love this game. There's a lot of people that love 40K that put out stuff to support it.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're just passion projects, which is awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Now, Games Workshop is now doing all this stuff, but the content there are a couple, like I just said, you can't really make money doing a podcast. There are some people that are actually making a living at this, like Tabletop Tactics and I guess the Art of War guys. I mean, there's people that are trying to make a living at this, but Games Workshop is producing content, but obviously that content is very, very sanitized. It's marketing. It's for marketing. Like they're not really speaking the truth in any of this stuff.
it's not going to have the same level of sincerity
Yeah.
that you would get from a passion project
Yeah.
done by a hobbyist.
Yeah.
You know, and it might be, and it's not even just a case of, oh well, they're positive about everything all the time. You know, like generally we're pretty positive on this podcast. And it's something that I like about how we discuss things. We try to look for the bright side. We've had a few where we got done when we look back and we're like, oh, did we get too negative? And we're like, nah, it was fair. But with GW, I think it's going to be everything is presented in this shining light of this is the best thing ever.
Everything is the best. Yep.
Yeah, and so I think it's a little bit harder to connect with that and make it feel sincere.
Yeah.
But they're like painting stuff, you know, I mean, Duncan has left, but their painting tutorials, I think, did a massive amount of work for them.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting that there are so many good painting tutorials out there now, but they've all... The third-party producers have had to elevate their game because Games Workshop has produced some pretty good stuff.
Yeah.
But, you know, like you said, I mean, everything is the best. There's a level of cheesiness to them sometimes where I kind of go, okay, what? Oh, now we're at the best. Okay. You sort of just have to realize exactly what the purpose is.
That's marketing.
Yeah. And they don't discuss you still get a sense of what that company is that they are producing and they're producing miniatures for people to love and paint. And they still talk miniatures first. It's rare they will have articles on rules and things, but the rules are always like, oh, this is so you can do this cool thing, and they don't really talk about the crunchiness of the game very often. It's not something I think that they typically delve into.
Yeah, I think 8th was a big change for them to where they really started to try to think about how do we make this a competitive product in terms of how can we get competitive gamers to, as base rules, enjoy this. And we saw that, you know, develop. 8th, it never quite got there. ITC was always going to have their missions, but you know, the last set of missions they released were pretty good, the chapter approved missions. And then in 9th, moving into it, well, they hired Mike Brandt, and now they're like, okay, we want to take control of this competitive sphere. We dabbled in it before. We started to consider it. We started to balance for it. Now we really want to take control of it. And I think we're seeing them do that in a lot of areas of the hobby.
Yeah,
we want to take control of this now. Okay, electronic apps. We don't want to just leave it off in no man's land, and if they get too close to our IP, we'll shut them down. Yeah. No, now we want to be proactive and control this.
Yeah, and actually that's a good point. Now that they have people, I know they're taking control a little more of the tournament scene and the rules and things like that. You know, maybe the content they produce won't just always be, hey, this is such a cool model. It's so fun to paint. This is a cool model. This is so fun. They might talk more about sort of the crunchiness of it or tournament stuff. They've always kind of shied away from the rules in a weird way. Like they sort of like the rules exist, but they don't directly talk about them. But War Machine talks about the rules. Magic is directly talking about their rules and their cards constantly all the time, right? I mean, they don't really pretend like it's a second thing.
Yeah, and I think GW could use more of that. I think as they develop their communication systems in terms of these, you know, what I'm honestly wanting to call patches for the game.
Yeah.
You know, I've talked about that before about how I see them kind of moving more into a competitive online game attitude, and where they're adjusting and tweaking things and trying to, you know, keep the meta new and fresh. I'd like to see more communication about, we made this change because of here's what we're seeing.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of the times competitive players are able to figure that out because they're attacking the most broken things in the game. But it'd be nice to get that from them, to have players start to go, okay, yeah, GW does know what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in actually having the community team, or like somebody from the community, from like Mike Brandt, sitting up there and saying, this is why we did this. We did this because of this. We did this because of this. And admit that, hey, there were mistakes made, not, you know, kind of sidestep it a little bit. Yeah. So, yeah.
And it wouldn't even need to be about maybe a specific unit. They could start discussing, okay, here's our goals for what a healthy meta looks like.
Sure, yeah.
Or here's our goals for what a healthy competitive scene looks like.
Yeah.
And we made these changes to the game because here are some trends we're seeing in the game that we don't really like.
Yeah. Directly talking about their rules and using a term like a meta, which I don't think and that would be shocking. But it would be welcome, I think, because then they're engaging with all levels of the hobby. They're not talking just about how cool something is, like a miniature, which, to be fair, their miniatures are so cool that they don't even need to say this is the best, because we can see with our own eyes, these are amazing.
Yeah, their new modeling and molding tactics have gotten so sophisticated. I mean, I have a box of Primaris Intercessors next to me.
Mm-hmm.
That box, compared to, even though I don't really like the almost monopose nature of a lot of it, you compare that to the old 4th edition Tactical Squad box. It is insane how much less work I need to get rid of mold lines. Just mold lines.
Yeah.
They're hidden. They're much smaller, and the detail is great. The posing is much better. I think that sometimes they are prone to needing a little bit of self-editing, where they put much on a model.
Yeah.
But generally, I think if you're going to err on one side, erring on the side of too much detail and interesting things to paint is probably not the worst.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Now, the third-party, we talk about third-party content, but there's been a lot of third-party apps to support the game. And the number one app that I think most 40K players who really discover it is Battlescribe. Battlescribe is an amazing app that we all use, that basically is it's the best list building app, because it's a flexible system that relies on the community to actually put in and update the data. So Battlescribe doesn't host the data; it just simply is a place where you can collect the data.
Mm-hmm.
So
and I think that's how they've gotten around any sort of IP concerns.
Yeah,
is that they're hosting it.
Yeah,
but yeah, it works pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, every once in a while, Battlescribe will have its issues.
Yeah,
but generally, it is a pretty consistent product.
Yeah.
And then one of the big things for me is I don't need to. Now, not to say that I'm relying on Battlescribe when I go to tournaments. I mean, I have copies of my rules with me.
Sure.
But if I'm in a game real quick and some question about a unit comes up real fast, I can pull it up and open a Battlescribe, and it will have the rules there. It will have the stats. It will have the chart of how does it degrade.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of immediate access to the data sheet, to the rules, to all that kind of stuff that I really hope for in the Games Workshop app.
And actually, as we were talking about the digital codex, and one of the problems is you can't look at units side by side. That's the thing with Battlescribe, is you can literally say, okay, here's my list. It's got these 10 different units, and I can scroll down and go and find the rule. So I'm not flipping through the entire book. I'm looking at the ones that I'm taking, including the trait that I selected, including the, all the stuff that I selected and built with my army. Those rules all exist kind of in a contained space in Battlescribe.
Absolutely.
And not even perfectly. It's literally, it can be messy. It's a lot of stuff. But that alone makes Battlescribe incredibly, and granted, yes, there's sometimes the points are wrong. Sometimes stuff is wrong. That's because...
Yeah, you got to verify it.
Yeah, you have to.
Rely on it for rules.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's fun to sit down and just kind of build lists on your phone. I mean, I'm not doing it now because we have no idea what the points are going to be with 9th edition, blah, 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 but Games Workshop tried to do this with Power Level. Power Level is not what a lot of people play. And even so, Power Level, they admitted themselves, they sort of just let it go. They weren't really updating it. So, I mean, the list building part of a new app is huge, but Battlescribe has set a pretty high bar for them to have to clear. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, and I sure hope they're looking at it to learn lessons from it.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
I really hope. Yeah.
Then Best Coast and Down Under pairings, they have been very critical to running events the size we have now. If we were trying to run, because I mean, Sean, you've probably run events where you've had spreadsheets to do, the pairings and all this kind of stuff, and you need an app in order to do this on a large scale. And you just need it. I mean, you couldn't do a 800-person event without something like this.
Oh God, no, not at all.
And so those have been huge, and they're making Battlescribe. I think relies on donations, but Best Coast and Down Under pairings are not only that they're pairings, but people enter lists, and you can see lists, and they are their own thing. They are kind of like a view into the meta, because you can look at an event, see who won it, see the list. Information just gets out like crazy now.
Oh yeah,
so,
yeah, absolutely. and I think it's very easy to point at the honestly by this point traditional LVO hangups. Both years that I've personally been to LVO, there were delays of at least an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Not anything close to what I wasn't there this last year.
Yeah.
But at the same time, how many events are running each week with no hiccups?
Yeah.
So if you're just looking at, okay, obviously they need to figure out a solution for these massive super events like LVO, but even up to a 100-person event, BAO that I was in, it ran smooth.
Yeah.
Flawlessly. And I remember being a tournament organizer in 5th edition and seeing the Magic pod organizer, getting pairings real quick. He had an app. He would press the get pairings button. He'd be able to announce the pairings. Meanwhile, I'm over there with reams of paper trying to figure out, okay, who scored a matchup. And that's for 12 people.
Yeah.
I don't have to.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So this is definitely a much better age to be a tournament organizer.
Yeah.
No more printing out the Excel spreadsheet of matchups and taping it to one wall, and then all the players having to crowd around the wall and figure out what their pairings were.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, and finally, there's one more app, and that was the ITC Battles app, which was really short-lived. I mean, it was really good. I was actually pretty clever because basically, these 3 apps are 3 separate endeavors, and I don't think they kind of talk to each other in a weird, but they're not integrated. They're not the same thing. But if you could list build and then start a game then you could use the ITC Battle app to start a game, and you can keep track of points and stratagem usage and stuff. And then you could upload those results to Best Coast pairings, but again, it was a little bit clunky. It wasn't completely integrated, but the idea of I'm going to build my list, and then I'm going to play a game with you. And then when I'm done, I post that somewhere for either people to look at or see the scores or for some kind of an event. These are all apps that directly support playing the game and the rules of the game. And because Games Workshop traditionally has kind of shied away from that and focused so much on the cool models, they haven't really gotten into that.
Yeah.
It's a huge blind spot they've had for years.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, and I think there was a focus for them even after they started to open up. Because 40K Forum started, I think 2 weeks after they shut down their forums. They grabbed the 40kforums.com, and so all the way back then, that was 2007, 2006, I think, something like that. Then they opened it back up, but even after opening it back up, I think they still had the idea of looking at something and asking directly, how does this sell 40K?
Yeah.
Right. And I think they have started to broaden their horizons and realize we don't need to necessarily always be selling the 40K product if we can make it more interesting, more easier to engage with. Because you're not selling it to new people. You're not bringing new people into the hobby with ITC Battles app. Right? Nobody's going to be like, Battle Scribe got me into 40K.
Yep.
We're going to hear that.
Yeah.
But what you can hear are people saying, I just wrote a list on Battle Scribe. I can't believe this fit. I need to buy 10 of this X model.
Yeah.
Because I didn't realize that I could make this list work. And then I was, fevered dream making a list last night, and it's the new thing. Right? That's happened. I bought models based off of a list that I wrote on Battlescribe and then never ran.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because they have never they sell rules, obviously, but those rules are there to sell models, not selling the rules themselves. The rules are almost there as just a way to have more, to have fun with your models. That's it. And and I don't know why, but they think they're getting around to this, but if they sold the rules, this is the rules of this awesome game, not just the miniatures, but this is an awesome game, and here are the rules of this awesome game, then I think they would lead more with the idea of I'm selling rules, not just models that happen to have rules associated with it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I think that they are getting there.
Yeah.
8th was a big transition for them.
Yep.
Where they said, we sold these rules, and now this is a product that we want to maintain, that we want to continue to give development time to. Yeah. Which is not something that they did before.
Yeah.
And so that's something that I really appreciate from them, because you're right. There's the infamous quote. I think it was 7th that it was. by old GW, quote unquote, where they're like, we're not a game company, we're a miniatures company.
Yeah.
And that was from top down. That was their focus. But they really are realizing how limiting of an idea that is.
Yeah.
If that is your focus, you're only grabbing the people that are matching that focus.
Yeah.
If you are treating it, honestly, when I look at what GW is doing, I look at the monetization of IPs like Marvel or Star Wars,
Mm-hmm.
where these really big companies have said, get it everywhere we can.
Yeah.
Just make it the most ubiquitous thing in pop culture, and people will engage with it, and they're going to give us money. However they give us money, we're getting money.
Yeah.
And if you look at, I don't think it's a coincidence that in the last 2 years even, but 5 years definitely, 40K has gone from this very niche community that if you mentioned it to somebody, they most likely had no idea what you were talking about, to now there are, stories of celebrities playing it, and there's the video games that have actually made a splash, and it has some name recognition for people. And I think GW is starting to realize, wow, if we make this a full-fledged cultural experience around an IP, not just around our models, then we're going to grab a lot more people. We're going to get a lot more eyes on the hobby, and we won't be some niche product anymore. Now's the time to do it.
Yeah.
Being a nerd is cool.
Yeah.
Dungeons & Dragons has shot through the roof in sales, and they're trying to chase that, I think.
Well, and people, not just like D&D, but board gaming, and that actual experience of playing the game is important to people. So, painting a model is a solitary exercise, owning models and all that. It's you by yourself. Playing the game with somebody, the actual game, the rules themselves, front and center, that is a thing. And people, and you can see them trying with Kill Team, with different scales of things, but pushing that experience of not just, let's just have some fun with somebody, but actually playing a game. People play, I play Catan and Ticket to Ride and Scythe and all these other board games with friends of mine or family. And we're not trying to create a narrative, it's friendly competition among people, and you're playing by the rules of this game, and it's fun. And so the rules themselves can be fun.
Absolutely.
So they haven't really ever had a digital rules app, and they haven't had a mission app, and they've never had a pairing app, and they've never had a list building app where you can kind of tie these things together. But that's all kind of rumored to be coming with the new application. We'll talk about what we hope the new application has. But before we jump into that, let's take a break. Let's hear a word from our sponsor, TraderA.com. If you're like most Warhammer players, you own a ton of models. At one time, you had big plans for these models, but now they just kind of sit, gathering dust, unused and unloved. It's time to clean out your closet of shame. Visit TraderA.com and get cash for your used models. Trader A is run by Captain A, someone who's been in the community a long time and has done a lot to grow the hobby. He's also a personal friend of the show. Unopened boxes, models on a sprue, half-built models, primed, painted, even bits have value. The process is simple. Send him a list of what you have, he'll send you a quote, you pack it up, send in your stuff, and he'll get you cash. You can shop around, but you're going to find that Trader A gives you 40% more than the other guys. You want it quick, you want to get rid of it, visit TraderA.com. Get cash to buy the stuff that you really want. TraderA.com. Sell your models and get your cash quick and easy. All right, and we're back. So let's talk about the Warhammer app, the rumored app. And, I work for software companies, so often the very first version of something is not, it is a V1. We call them V1s, like the version 1 or the MVP. What do we need to have to sort of the minimum viable product? What's the absolute minimum it needs to have? Because there's always going to be room to grow. What do you think this app needs to have is at a minimum? What does it need to have to be useful out of the gate?
List building.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think if you do not put list building in it, it'll still get use if it has the other half of what I'm about to say. But list building, like I said, Battlescribe is I use it. I know other people have used it as just a time killer. Like, I got a few minutes. Let's write up a list on Battlescribe.
Sure.
And so I think that will bring a lot of eyes to it. And then the other half that I would say is integration of the digital rules that are kept up to date. So I want to be able to, if I open that app and I open up my faction, I'm starting to look at rules. I want everything on that page or however I'm having that information displayed accurate.
Yeah. Those two things If they just had those two things, I mean, that's pretty huge, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. So list building, and when we say list building, we mean the crunchiness of 40K list building, which involves not just putting units together and selecting their datasheet options, but Battlescribe has selecting warlord trait, identifying which one's the warlord, picking the relics, using stratagems to increase the amount of relics you do, tracking how much CP you have. I mean, it's a lot. So you're going by detachment, and then you have a CP kind of thing. I mean, it has to be at least as good as what Battlescribe is doing, or at least as functional as what Battlescribe's doing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there will be a little bit of forgiveness if it doesn't immediately jump into a Battlescribe competitor, but it's got to be close.
Got to be close.
It's got to be close, and it has to be worked on.
Yeah.
Because I do feel like the community still has some lack of trust in GW to handle this well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think a lot of us are really excited, but I think there are a lot of people that are also going, I don't know, it's GW. Do you think they're going to do it right, or is it going to be a half solution?
Yeah.
So I think out of the gate they need to come out strong for people to really buy into it.
Yeah.
And they might develop if they don't, they might develop to a point where I know that if I had a buddy come up to me and say, hey, they worked on the app and it's a lot better, you should check it out again, I would.
Yeah.
So they can develop to that, but I think they would be best set off by saying, okay, we have to be able to match in at least these two areas.
Yeah. Yeah. So list building, and then in addition to list building, when you create a list, you are basically, let's go back to the combo 40K. You have a collection of data slates, and you have a collection of equipment, relics, traits, things like that are all kind of related. And the second part of it is I want to be able to see the rules, the updated rules for all of that in relation to my list.
Yes.
So that is the bare minimum to me. Essentially, that's Battlescribe functionality. But then the second part of it is really just we need to be able to have these rules. And like you said, they have to be updated. Because right now, Digital Codex does not get, I don't remember if it gets updated exactly the way we want it to get updated.
I have not purchased a Digital Codex. But if I remember correctly, you can either get it as an ebook or you can get it as like a different format that they will try to keep it up to date.
Yeah.
But I know that for myself, I have a dream where I log on to the app and I open up Dark Angels and it pops up a little screen and it says, hey, just so you know, Chapter Approved got released last week and here's what's changed since you last logged on.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then when I exit out of it, when I'm looking at my faction rules, all of those changes are implemented.
Yeah.
But they've also been shouted out to me so that I know, oh, hey, by the way, oh, wow, a land speeder went down by 10 points. Let me figure out what I can do with that, something like that.
Yeah, or, you have a list. Let's say you've got like 5 or 6 lists. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't know. I have to completely clear out Battlescribe pretty often because it'll get to 20, 30. It gets out of control. But, you have your list that you've been working on and you've been tweaking around with it. But then all of a sudden, again, here are the changes to your list. And here's the things that have happened since this new chapter approved. But, also, if it's a true living digital rule set, they don't have to do FAQs twice a year. They could make slight adjustments monthly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that having that app, having the community tied to the app in a meaningful way, where it becomes part of the 40K experience, just like having a Battlescribe list does, or being at a tournament using BCP is. If it is tied to the experience of playing 40K, then that becomes a communication avenue you can use. Yeah. You don't get rid of other communication avenues, but you make it to where, okay, we have this. It's standard operating practice by our players is that they're looking at this pretty regularly. Let's communicate with them.
Yeah. Through
that app. Let's let them know about those changes. Let's do those changes more often. Or let's start pulling data out of that app and seeing what is getting played with if we're able to enter games.
Yeah. Yeah. I think to go back to the original point about what is the MVP, I think you're absolutely right. And I think we're talking about it. I want to build a list and I want to have digital rules that get updated. And then we're sitting here saying, well, if they do that right, digital rules updating, then that means that they could update more often because they don't have to worry so much about going through this entire process. So
yes.
But let's stretch it beyond further. Like, what are the next versions of this thing? So right now in a digital codex, it is an image it's a scanned image of the actual print codex. If you have digital rules, you don't have to have like right now in Age of Sigmar, they're tables, but a digital rule set is. You basically could be simply, a database of all these rules and all the linkages and how they're all kind of pulled together. So you're not looking at a table of a Space Marine. You're looking at movement, and the result of movement is in this case 6. But that movement is a characteristic that exists all by itself as a unique, element in the database that's linked to everything else. So what goes faster than a Space Marine? Well, I could maybe look that up. What goes slower? I mean, how is he in relation to other units in other books? So there's just so much more they could do, but it would really take breaking apart the data slates and all of the rules into database elements so that they can all be linked. And that's a lot of work. That's a lot of work.
It is. And I have, again, I'm starting to incorporate my pipe dreams.
Yeah,
but I have a pipe dream where I'm able to look at a data slate where it's a condensed version of it, maybe stat line, and then the names of the rules. And then when I like click on the rule, a tooltip pops up and it describes the rule to me, so that way I can get more information on it, or I can have a setting to get rid of that. And then in that tooltip, if I have a question about something, it mentions this phase or this thing, I can click on that and have it take me to that page.
Yeah.
Or if I'm on a stratagem, it can be talking about the unit, and I can click on the unit keyword, and it will show me all the units that fall into that keyword.
Yeah.
Or I click on the unit, and it will pop up the data slate right there in a condensed form.
Yeah.
Something.
Well, and you could have sort of metadata around a list, right? So I have a list as a combination of units. Again, so we're moving way out of the MVP into pipe dream territory, which is great because it's kind of like, what could it be? Like, what could this thing be? How many attacks does this list have at range 48 inches or 36 inches? What are the attacks? What's the strength? What's the damage at the different ranges? What's the movement of everything? I mean, there's a lot it could do because then you're collecting you're not just displaying unit values. You're collecting them all and presenting it like, here's my army value.
Yes.
And that
Absolutely.
would be cool.
I love that idea.
Yeah. And then, like you said, you could attach stratagems. So what happens if I apply this or apply that? Or, if I throw a reroll in here? I don't think it needs to get to it. We don't need to do Math Hammer because I think that's too far.
Yeah.
But
I think those kind of, here's your list, bird's eye view idea. I really like that because that's a good way to look at lists. Here's how many bodies you have. Here's how many wounds you have. Here's how many different units you have falling into the different slots. I think that'd be a really cool breakdown to see.
Yeah, yeah. And they can do that eventually when they do it right.
Yeah. And then one other thing that I know War Machine did with their app when they had an app that I thought was pretty fun was you could set up what was called My Collection. And you put in all the units and all the warg that you had, and then when you wrote a list from it, you could select it to only show you units in your collection.
Oh, that's cool. That's super cool. Yeah.
So you don't have to scroll past all the units that you haven't bought.
Yeah.
You're like, and then when you click on your war gear, it's like, well, you have this or this or this available for war gear upgrades for this guy.
Yeah.
So
and it's such a moneymaker too for Games Workshop because you could have a wish list of items. You could build things and say, oh, would you like, and have a link directly to the Games Workshop site where you literally can buy them straight out of the app. Which I know that's probably something they'll do fairly quickly, but it's perfect. It's a great time to do it.
Yep, absolutely.
So the other, so that's just the sort of like before a game gets started. I think they said something about having some level of mission back and forth with this. And I don't know if they're going to do like an ITC Battles app where you are picking secondaries, you are keeping track of primary and secondary objective points. You are doing a lot of the things that you normally do on a piece of paper. Will they mimic that in this app? I don't know, but it would be cool if they did.
I'd love them to. I'd love for the app to be set up to where you could go start a game, press that button, gives you a game code, you give it to your opponent, he plugs in that game code, and suddenly on both of your devices you have access to the information for both armies.
Oh, yeah, now you're talking.
And then you can have the main screen be mission tracking, but then if I'm like, oh shit, I have a question about that, but I don't want to take up time during his turn or whatever it may be, or maybe I don't want him to think that I think he's cheating. So I'm going to pull open the data slate for his unit, and now I can see what stratagems it can be targeted by. That kind of information, equality of access to information about army is something that War Machine did very easily, because you could just say, "Hey, can I see their card real quick?"
Yeah,
and then you just they hand you your card, and there's everything you have. You don't have to say, "Hey, can I see your codex?"
Yeah.
And then what page are Razor Wing flocks on? I don't think it's right. I can kill my whole army in early 8th, and then you're like, "Oh wow, it's actually true." I think that would be really useful.
Yeah,
in game, be able to say, "Oh, here's how many relics he has," all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, if you could send people your lists, and you need that as a condition to start the game, and the game gets started, and like you said, you can flip through all the stuff, and then when they use a strat, you can go, "Oh, boink," and then push the button, find the strat, search for it, and say, "Oh, okay." You literally could be checking what your opponent is doing casually. Yep. I mean, you're not going to be obnoxious about it, but you could be checking on things. And also, not only that, you're following what his army is doing. You're learning more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're not just having that the Ynnari player starts doing things, and you're a newer player, and your eyes just glaze over, and you're like, "Just tell me when my army is done dying, okay?"
Yeah.
You'd be able to go, "Oh, I see. Oh, okay. Wow. Okay, that's good. I'm seeing here on the page what you're doing."
Yep, for sure. And then when the battle's over and it's finished, you could have the option to upload that up, and that way, Games Workshop can get so much information from the players, because that way they're getting fed what units are being taken in these lists. I mean, if these are results that could be shared with Games Workshop, not just list building, because anyone can casually build lists, but actual games played and it gets uploaded, then they have a ton of information, and not just from the major tournaments, not just from some of the people there, but they have information across everywhere. And they can see where, there are certain things that work better than others, and they themselves will have access to an amazing amount of data.
Yeah, absolutely. And with them now tying capturing objectives or certain secondaries to specific units or to a unit action, it'd be interesting. I don't know if they'd be able to do it, but it'd be interesting to figure out a way to have these units for capturing the objectives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then they're able to get even more. Okay, well, this one unit choice is really succeeding at scoring a bunch of these different objectives. Maybe they're not performing too well in terms of killiness or shooting, or survivability. They are performing too well in objective scoring.
Yeah.
So that we need to knock them down on, or we need to change the objectives here, something like that.
This digital, it's basically a digital aid to a 3D physical experience, but this digital aid allows them to get information on the meta, or how people are playing the game, because right now everything is just sort of, they can only hear from what they hear. They only have the sources they hear about. But at this point, they not only get the information, but then they can start to communicate basically the rules of the game. And then at that point, it's one thing to be able to change a rule and have everyone get that rule update all at once through the digital device, but it's another to actually get direct feedback from games played on the rules for them, so that it's that feedback loop, right? And at that point, that to me, that's digital 40K. It's still a tabletop experience, because that's what makes it special. The digital stuff basically helps to play the game, helps to learn the game, and it helps to grow the game, and then the game becomes better because it's continually being slightly updated as a result of this.
And the real dream here for me is that 40K will finally follow up on the promise I was given in 8th, that we will be carrying less books.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I'm not carrying those physical books to tournaments anymore, but I gotta have them all on my phone. I have to have 5 different things available to be able to look up if I need to.
Yep.
It'd be very nice to go, here's my app.
Yeah.
That's what you need.
And I think I love the idea where you just say, all right, I'm going to send you my list. And you get the list, and you can see, and you can literally walk through it with them. And it's not a question of, it's such a great way to support it. And it makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Now, of course, for their first version, if they have a decent list building app and some digital rules, that's everything else is, they can work on the rest of it. So
exactly.
Awesome. All right. Well, that is all we have for Digital 40K. I think that the future is bright. I'm really excited to see what they do. It's a long time coming. They've had some experience with Age of Sigmar. I think the Warhammer app to me is even more exciting than the new edition. Maybe I won't say it's as exciting as the new models because the new models are cool, but to me, it has the potential to be a game changer, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I love the new models, but if the app works, 40K as a whole changes.
Yes.
Dude.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, that's all we have. So thank you so much for listening to our show. We love to hear from our listeners, so please feel free to message us on Facebook or email us at thebattlehosts@gmail.com. If you'd like to support us, you can help us in a few different ways. You can tell your friends about us. You can like us on Facebook. You can subscribe to us on YouTube, and you can leave a review on iTunes, which does help to boost our listening audience. Finally, you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thebattlehosts. For as little as $1 a month, you can help us with the cost of running the show and staying engaged with the 40K community. So thanks for listening to Battle Hosts.
Remember to be a better gamer
and build a better community.
Good night.